Hollywood stories with excitement sometimes never made the cinema. Nancy Kulp and Buddy Ebsen's story makes you want to know them more. Their lives were already intriguing enough to fill novels before the Beverly Hillbillies brought them fame. However, what transpired before that great event set the tone for their conflict that night. Start with Nancy. She was unusual in Hollywood. Their daughter was born in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. While her dad was a traveling salesman, her mother taught and ultimately became a principal. Nancy was raised in Miami with rules in school. By 1943, she had a degree in writing and looked ready to write instead than model. The path Nancy took wasn't straight. She met Clark Gable and the Duke and Duchess of Windsor for the Miami Beach Tropics, a local newspaper. Not tiny potatoes, right? Nancy didn't hesitate during World War II. She left school for the U.S. Navy Reserve. Think of her. Young and driven, she became a lieutenant while serving her country. Let's think about that before flipping the coin. They couldn't have been more different. Buddy wanted to dance. Born and reared in Orlando, Florida. Theatergoers called him and his sister Vilma the baby of stairs. Buddy was light-hearted and easygoing. Despite his hardships, people liked seeing him dance. Buddy had barely enough money for lunch in New York. He needed to work hard. Hard work paid off. Broadway called first, followed by Hollywood. Buddy danced with Shirley Temple, appeared in plays, and Walt Disney asked him to help move Mickey Mouse. It wasn't always great. Buddy's career plummeted after playing the Tin Man in This Is Oz. It sounds like a dream job. Not really. Their makeup contained metal dust, which nearly killed him. Someone took over after he went to the hospital. Buddy changed careers, instructing military officers to sail and teaching during World War II. He was laid back, but life had hit him hard. Imagine Nancy and Buddy as separate persons with different habits and goals. Nancy arrived in Hollywood in the 1950s. She worked in marketing at MGM after a failed marriage. A filmmaker saw her acting face. She soon appeared in I Love Lucy as a maid and Maverick as a drunk waitress. Nancy didn't play the lead, but her wit and no-nonsense approach stole the show. Buddy was also gaining fame on TV. People adored his folky, homey parts. His reputation for trust and cooperation was well established. He appeared that way to most. But now things get interesting. By the late 1950s, Nancy and Buddy were working on TV. They weren't working together yet, but the town wasn't big. She was courageous and spoke her mind. Bud, meanwhile, was considered more classic and possibly old-fashioned. Before the Beverly Hillbillies, they sought opportunities wherever they could. Nancy played many minor roles in popular shows. Even though she didn't appear like most Hollywood stars, she kept going. Her style was her own. However, Buddy played unusual and memorable characters in westerns, dramas, and comedies. He played villains on Gunsmoke and Maverick, showing his darker side. By the early 1960s, both had established themselves in Hollywood, but neither had landed the big role. Naturally, the Beverly Hillbillies changed that. The Beverly Hillbillies debuted on TV like a rocket. People loved the Clampetts, a humble country family suddenly surrounded by Beverly Hills aristocrats. The show was humorous, adorable, and ridiculous, so millions watched weekly. Middle, Bud Ebsen, Nancy Kulp. A particular actor was needed to play Jane Hathaway, Mr. Drysdale's efficient secretary who enjoys birds in the Beverly Hillbillies, the Clampett banker. Nancy fit well. And Buddy? His commercial reputation was well established by then. Jed Clampett chose him because of his laid-back nature and smart fatherly skills. Jed strengthened the Clampett family, a wise man with little education. Bud made the audience trust and root for Jed with his generosity and charm. It was an instant hit when it premiered. The Ozarks family came to Beverly Hills after finding oil. This fish out of water tale was popular. The Clampetts were relatable and entertaining. They made several humorous blunders since Beverly Hills' sophisticated lifestyle clashed with their simple ways. Miss Jane, played by Nancy Kulp, was central. Miss Jane was no ordinary office worker. She was honest and smart. She constantly spoke out against her wealthy boss, Mr. Drysdale. She loved the Clampetts, especially Jethro, Jed's nephew. Miss Jane liked Jethro, as shown in the show. Nancy's lovely and hilarious portrayal made you love her. The role earned her an Emmy nomination. Buddy was also famous as Jed. The family stayed together because of Jed. When Granny stirred problems, Ellie Mae's gentleness made everyone like her, and Jethro ruined one wild plan after another. Jed wasn't mad. He sanely spoke to a chaotic household. His quip, "Well, doggies," became renowned in America. However, things get complicated. Nancy and Buddy were wonderful on film. Nothing on screen? Not really. They were not at odds over their behavior or work ethic. Not really. It was more. It was impossible to ignore their stark disparities in personality and worldview. Politically conservative Buddy wasn't scared to speak up. It's clear why many watched weekly. Despite their success, Nancy and Buddy's tension never went away. Some say it became worse during the show. It went beyond politics. They didn't get along. When fighting, clever Nancy never gave up. Buddy was nice but stubborn. Meeting those forces caused sparks. It didn't help that the show kept them near. They shared many scenes as Miss Jane and Jed. They may have laughed and smiled on TV, but viewers could see they were upset. Donna Douglas, who played Ellie Mae, said they argued for weeks. Imagine how stressful that set was. Both were pros, so their bouts didn't ruin the spectacle. It wasn't easy, though. Working with someone you don't like is challenging, yet they did it, and the audience never saw the tension brewing behind the scenes. Once finished, the Beverly Hillbillies was a pop culture phenomenon. Many programs have been affected by it, and people still talk about it. The play ended, but Nancy and Buddy's narrative continued. Their differences would shape their interactions. Nancy switched to politics as the cameras stopped rolling. She ran for us House of Representatives in 1984, years after the show ended. That day she was 62. While some didn't think an actor could be a politician, Nancy believed she could help. Ronald Reagan did it, right? Nancy ran as a Pennsylvania Democrat for 9th Congressional District. From the outset, the race was challenging. Her opponent, Bud Schuster, had served 6 terms in a Republican district. Nancy didn't back away from a fight. It took her a lot of work to convince others of her changed views. She tried her hardest despite the obstacles. Buddy Ebsen joining the fight without her was unexpected. Buddy offered to record a radio ad supporting her opponent despite having nothing to do with Pennsylvania or the election. He said in the ad that Nancy was too liberal and exploiting her fame to influence others. The argument went from ideas to personal. Nancy was surprised. She and Buddy had argued for years, but this was fresh dishonesty. The second time Nancy mentioned it, she was blunt. Buddy shouldn't have intervened, she argued. He should have avoided IT. He's not the kind old Jed Clampett from the show. She stated in one interview, irritated. She also stated that she would never have hurt him, even if they didn't get along. Even years later, her comments showed her pain. The commercial hurt Nancy's campaign. It may have injured it. Her opponent won almost 66% of the vote, defeating her. Nancy didn't blame Buddy for her loss, but his actions hurt. After processing what transpired, she returned to Pennsylvania. Buddy didn't seem to regret his conduct. He stuck to his Nancy statement. After years, even he seemed to regret it. He regretted the commercial and their out-of-control feud at the end of his life. Unfortunately, the relationship was too damaged by then. Nancy and Buddy hardly spoke after the campaign. The reconciliation was fleeting. Teaching gave Nancy consolation and allowed her to use her skills and expertise. Juniata College, a small liberal arts college in rural Pennsylvania, hosted her as an artist in residence. She influenced many pupils in her acting workshops. Juniata seemed to set a quiet chapter in her life. Beyond Hollywood and politics, Nancy found a society that valued her wisdom and sincerity. Later, students said they liked her for her Hollywood stardom and passion to helping others. She taught with comedy and love, making her kids feel welcome on stage regardless of their background. She probably smiled as she recounted her Beverly Hillbillies days and gave life advice on and off the stage. Nancy also performed in local plays and appeared on TV. Even after switching to teaching, she kept acting. She clearly enjoyed her craft. That character, with his rustic charm and slogan, was legendary. Buddy appeared unconcerned by the association. He accepted fan affection for Jed, even if it meant being typecast. This wasn't always simple privately. Imagine building a diverse, talented career only to be recognized for one job. Buddy handled it well, attending events and interviews to lovingly recall his Beverly Hillbillies days. In his subsequent memoir, he recounted Hollywood, his career, and the Nancy dispute. Buddy had plenty to do besides acting. The skilled sailor spent much of his free time on the ocean. He also wrote novels to express himself outside of acting. Buddy was a multi-talented man who stayed active and engaged throughout his life. Buddy married Dorothy Knott, his third wife, for many years and spent his senior years with family. He died in 2003 at 95, a rare age. He was one of the few living links to the golden age of television by then, when most of his peers had died. Countless Beverly Hillbillies repeats and the memories of his co-workers carried on his legacy after his death. Their story resembles two strong personalities that couldn't connect. They were passionate, talented, and opinionated, yet their differences made communication difficult. The screen magic they made together is unavoidable. Their skill and talent made millions of viewers laugh and feel good as Jed and Miss Jane.